Yo, what is up, everybody? SaganSurvives here. I just wanted to do a quick update video about the Swarmblade bleed bug build for 0.9. Just get you the freshest information as possible, as quickly as possible, in like the most condensed way possible. So anyway, I want to do an update because we have vastly improved our gear since the last update videos, and this is, live current information. So I got really lucky last night and dropped this health chest piece. You really want to make sure you get a percent increased health on your chest by the time you are doing the level 90 Monoliths, which is actually what we're doing right now. I just beat the Reign of Dragons one, so now we're getting ready for the 90s and then moving on into empowered Monoliths. I wanted to go over this chest piece because it's got the +2 that we wanted, and then the base started with just the 27% increased health. That was a tier 6 drop only mod, and so we took this chest and we crafted the T+1, or rather the T1 Swarmblade form. It had the lightning res. It was like tier 4, I think, and then I put on attunement because at the time I actually needed attunement on it in order to make my build work. But you can also put, like, the most ideal thing that you would have is you really want the increased health, the other suffix, whatever you need. You really need the +2 Swarmblade form. And then the last prefix, I would highly recommend getting like increased aspect of the bore duration. The other place you can get increased aspect of the bore duration is on your helmet, or you can get it from idols. But whatever your build needs, just kind of fill in what you need there. But the most important things for your chest, and obviously getting like the implicit increased health chest as well. It's a new armor this in this update. This is like it's kind of like an 8 out of 10 for me. I would say it's an 8 out of 10. It's almost a 9 out of 10, and it's not quite a 10 out of 10. But I will get a 10 out of 10 chest. But for now, this is really, really good. The other update about the weapon is I finally got my bleed weapon here. Really, really important that you have this particular base before you go into empowered monoliths, because you want as much bleed chance on melee hit as possible. And then I also recommend getting melee attack speed. Somebody suggested getting attack speed into this build, and I highly agree. Attack speed feels amazing. It's really, really good. So actually, highly recommend it for optimizing your DPS. So on your weapon, you want percent chance to bleed on hit for a suffix. Your second suffix doesn't matter all that much, but for me, +5 all attributes, I will take that. And then I crafted increased melee attack speed, and I didn't get too lucky on the rolls here. This was kind of a bad craft. I would say it's like a 6 out of 10 as far as like a good weapon, but it's good enough to kind of get me going. And then I'm going to have pictures of all the other gear here so you guys can take a closer look. But it's all been updated since my last update video. Got the increased hybrid health on the gloves and the increased attack speed there, so that's really good as well. But yeah, I'll have pictures of all this here, all the idols, so you can get to know the gear a little bit better. So far, our damage for our bleed damage is a little bit low, but that's okay. Our bleed chance is pretty high right now. We're looking at probably a 350 to 400% chance to bleed right now on hit, so that's really, really good. Our defenses are good, our crit avoidance cap is good, and our endurance levels are good as well. So yeah, luckily we got that health chest piece. I also have increased health on the belt, so that's really incredible. So I want to move on to the passives, because the passives are incredibly important to talk about right now at this current junction in the timeline of this character and in this build. When I was doing these beginning monoliths like 80, 75, these were no problem. Getting into the 85, killing the mobs, no problem. But once I got to the boss, I noticed that my single target damage dropped off significantly, and I think that was because I didn't have deep wounds, and I also didn't have Tusk Warrior. So I wanted to emphasize in this video how important these nodes are for your single target scaling damage as you head into the later monoliths. I had too many points allocated into the Druid tree around level 75 to 80. I'm level 81 now, but anyway, I had too many points in Fetid Resilience. It's a really good one, but at the same time, I'm kind of looking at some of these passive points and thinking to myself, as far as when you put them in, there's greater value to you as the character and the build, the power of the build. The point is these nodes just offer you so much more power in the build before other things. So I want to emphasize that even though the skill tree doesn't really tell you where to lay out the points, the most important thing that I want you to know is I want to encourage you to learn the build and learn any build you play, because you won't really understand the build until you learn how it works. And once you learn how it works, then you can move points around based on what you need. So for me in my case, I didn't need these increased health points here. Hide skin gives incredible health, but I had 10 points there that I just didn't need because I had so much health already. I was also using impervious. I was messing around with this a little bit. I took those points out. This is still a really good node that we're going to bring back later, but for now I just don't need it because I need damage. I was just way too invested in defenses. This is a good node, but at the same time we just don't get offered as much power in the build at this point in time when we have point allocations to go out at level 81. And then additionally, this is an incredibly powerful node because of the penetration. So with physical damage, any sort of physical damage will penetrate. Hit damage does not scale our bleed damage, but physical pen does scale our bleed damage. So we actually want to get as much penetration as possible. So we put points there. And then additionally, I am going to recommend putting at least 4 points into Boar Heart, if not 5. I'm going to try 5 because I want this to be up as much as possible. I want Aspect of the Boar to be up as much as possible. But it's entirely possible I might go down to 4 depending on when I do optimize it a little bit more. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to know. If you're lacking single target damage, go into Beastmaster and put those points there, and then as you head into level 90 and level 100, you'll reallocate the points over into these nodes. And then additionally, one thing that's majorly different from the first update build, first revision of this build, is I dropped Harmonious Wisdom, but only after I picked up the Critical Strike Avoidance Blessing. I recommend that you pick up this particular blessing from Reign of Dragons on every character that you can or need to. If there's another mod on this timeline that you want, then I totally understand not going for it. But whenever you do get a high roll of it, which I did just now when I did finally beat him after respeccing into the Beastmaster nodes for the bleed damage, I got this node. So what that enabled me to do was to drop Harmonious Wisdom. Since I don't need attunement all that much, the only reason this was on the original talent tree was to give us that crit avoidance, but because we don't need it right now, I dropped it. However, in the future, like let's say I replace my helmet here and I lose 22% critical strike avoidance, I'll drop down below my level again. So at some point I will need to or might need to pick up this particular node again on the tree based on what my needs are. So that's another reason why I encourage you to learn the build and learn how to craft and optimize your gear based on what you need and move things around. It's no problem to move things around based on what your character needs at the current time. The other thing I wanted to go over was the trees here, the skill trees. So I have been kind of messing around a lot with this the past day, and one thing I discovered is we don't need the Army of the Tempest nodes at all. If you are scaling the build based on spell damage, then you might want to keep this because this 40% will scale with your investments into spell damage. But if you're not investing in spell damage, I don't recommend this anymore because we're going to be having so much attack speed anyway. We don't even need it. And then additionally, we did pick up another point into Water Strider because the stacks of Maelstrom give us so much damage that we want that. And then also I did try 3 out of 3 points in Hive Mind, and I actually really like it. Some people might say, or rather if you try this node, 2 is totally fine if you are summoning a lot of hives, because if you're summoning a lot of hives, then you don't need it as much. But since I'm a little bit more lazy with my hide summoning, I like to have the Locust coming from the swarm. So 3 out of 3 is actually worth it here, but you can just have 2, and you can put a third point into Locust agility to get a little bit more base defenses, or you can even put a 5th point into Carnage base. But some people might even say they don't even need 4 points into Carnage. They might only need 3. So you can kind of mess with that, and if you want to put into Wasp Flight to get some extra attack speed. I know it seems kind of weird that we're not doing the bleed arm, but I've never tested this, but I just don't think you need it. I think it's totally unnecessary, but there is possibility that I could be wrong. So if you want to explore the bleed arm here, you could totally do that. And then the only other changes that we really have made, there's no changes to this. We're still utilizing the stun chance and the physical conversion. Make sure we have max duration and max dodge from Maelstrom stacks. I did make a pretty significant change to the tornado tree, and we dropped the storm orbs entirely, and we opted to go for first of all, increased mana efficiency is really good, and we're dropping the mana cost. So the mana cost of this actually goes down by about 15 points, so almost, actually it was a significant portion. So I actually recommend doing this if you're not using spell damage to scale these. Just drop this entirely, because it's going to give us increased attack speed, and then we invest into the increased duration to make it last a little bit longer. This is going to be proccing every 3 to 4 seconds anyway, so we're going to be having that pretty much all the time. So shout out to the original Reddit user who made that suggestion, but that's a really good suggestion. And then additionally, we dropped the mana cost here because the mana cost is not even that significant, so that's going to save us 1 point, and I put that into Eternal Protection to make this last longer, make the Thorn Barrier buff last longer, so we get longer duration of our increased armor. So that's really good too. So I'll have updated skill trees, imager links, and also LastEpoch tools linked to all this information. And yeah, I will end this video with a bit more gameplay, so you guys can kind of check out the gameplay. But one thing before I go here is I wanted to note just kind of how we use our swarms in a map. So we're going to go into a map really quick. When I was streaming yesterday, somebody came into the chat, and my friend Ron came into the chat and was asking questions about Swarm and Locust mechanics and behavior. And I gave him some tips that I thought was really good that I want to share here. So at the beginning of the map, I will always put down 2 hives and kind of let those guys ramp up, and so that way I have my swarm AoE around me right from the get-go. And because we're invested into hive mind, and I'm invested into 3 points currently, we just have locusts around us all the time. But the thing about them is they are a little bit more aggressive nowadays. So basically the whole idea is you want to just kind of keep an eye on them, because they will aggro onto things faster than you can. Like for example right there, they aggroed onto mobs that weren't even on my screen. So instead of moving ahead of me, I sort of kind of just glanced at their position and noticed that they were moving south of my position, below me. And so instead of moving forward my direction, I just went with them so that I could go swarm strike them and continue my huge big massive damaging AoE around me. So it just is going to come down to a lot of practice, but if you are struggling with having locusts around you at any given time, I do recommend doing 3 out of 3 points into hive mind, because that'll just help make sure that there are locusts just coming from your swarm at all time. So what I mean by that is, with 3 out of 3 points in hive mind, we're just sitting here, right? We're not fighting any enemies. There's some random locusts coming off screen. We're just sitting here. Let's just consume all these guys. We're just going to test how many locusts we get from our swarm just being on, right? So we've got 10. We generated 10 locusts from just the fact that our swarm was on. That was with no hives or anything. So at any given time, your swarm should be generating 10, let's say 6 to 10 locusts before the swarm goes off. And so you can kind of just like take a break, like, oh, there's no locusts around me, I'm gonna go up behind me and I'm gonna swarm strike them before I move forward. So if you like the build, if you really think it's strong like I do and think it's fun to play, just kind of spend just a little bit of time learning the mechanics, and if you're tanky enough where you don't need to worry about dying, you can kind of watch the mechanics, or rather the the mechanics of the Locusts flying around and get to know it a little bit better. So just practice makes perfect, my friends. Anyway, I'm going to keep on mapping here, work on these level 90 monos. I'll have gear filters and a bunch of information in the video. Really appreciate all my recent subscribers subscribing to the channel and liking the videos and enjoying the content. I'm having a lot of fun making it, and just really appreciate you guys enjoying this build and interacting with me and playing LastEpoch with me. So anyway, good luck in Eterra, and have a wonderful day, my friends. Catch you later. Bye-bye.